Good evening. Welcome to the Elyria City Council meeting for Monday, August 2nd, 2021. At this time, I'd like to have a moment of reflective silence followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Keys, would you please lead us in the pledge? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mrs. Keys. Mr. Clerk, can I have a roll call, please?
Yes, sir. Mr. Callahan.
Here.
Mr. Serra.
Here.
Mr. Oswald.
Here.
Mr. Baird.
Here.
Mrs. Mitchell.
Here.
Mr. Tollett. Mrs. Simmons.
Here.
Mrs. Davis.
Here.
Mrs. Keys.
Here.
Mr. Jesse.
Here.
Mr. Stewart.
Here.
10 present, 1 absent. There's excuse for Mr. Tollett.
Can I get a motion to excuse Mr. Gillette?
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Mitchell.
Second.
Second by Mr. Sears. Any further discussion?
Question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Public hearings.
There are none.
Can I get approval of the minutes?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Serra.
Second.
Second by Ms. Keys. Is there any discussion on the minutes?
Question.
Question's been called. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Remarks and reports from city officials. I see that Mayor Westfield's not here this evening, so Mr. Williams, if you'd want to, while you're there, I'll address you first.
Yes. First, to the chair, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I have nothing specific. I will be commenting on some things as needed. So if there are any questions from anyone, please feel free to ask. We do have a few presentations through the director's office, and we'll be available to share information as we go forward. Thank you.
Very good. Any questions for Mr. Williams at this time? Ms. Keys?
Through you, Mr. President, since the mayor's not here, I'm wondering what the status of the Pops concert is. I've had a number of phone calls concerning corporate donations. That's always been the way we've run the Pops concert in the past. And my understanding is that's not happening, and I guess I'm questioning why.
Yes, I can give you some insight on that. We had a meeting with the Parks and Rec Department last week. The Pops concert is on. We've been in contact with the Pops Orchestra. We have the media information ready, and that's out. Carl Tibolo is still conducting. Actually, this concert will be quite interesting. What's his name? I'm sorry. Lester Lynch, who is a former Elyria High School graduate, a baritone, will be singing in concert with the Pops this year, so that's exciting. So we're doing the promotional things. We are working on the sponsorship components. We're a bit late on that, I think, but we are doing that, and we'll be able to give you an update on where that is at the next meeting. However, the concert is on the 4th, I believe. So yes, there's some solicitation going out through the Parks and Rec Department and some folks from our staff. So we are soliciting, but the concert is a full go, and contracts have been signed, and we're looking forward to an exciting event.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Williams at this time? Thank you. Mr. Baird?
Yeah, you said the 4th. Is that, I hope that's September 4th.
Yes, yes.
Very good. All right. Safety Service Director Brubaker.
Thanks, Mr. President. Just a couple things. First, I'm going to read it as it was sent to me. On July 19th, between 9:30 a.m. and 10 o'clock a.m., Purvey Smallwood from our sanitation department was driving one of the sanitation trucks down Hilliard Road. Noticed that a lady was lying face down on the sidewalk and bleeding profusely from her head. Mr. Smallwood immediately stopped to check on her and contacted EPD and 911, gave the location where she had fallen. Mr. Smallwood stayed with her until the paramedics and fire arrived, as well as a family member. The lady had fallen on her face and was bleeding, and to our knowledge, she is doing well. But kudos to Mr. Smallwood from our sanitation department. Driving those big garbage trucks, you're paying attention to a lot of things, and for him to pick up on a lady that was laying in the middle of the sidewalk on Hilliard was something keen that he was paying attention to. So kudos to Mr. Smallwood. Also, I'd like to give a quick kudo to, and one of the chiefs can speak to this a little bit more diligently. It was brought to my attention that firefighter Nick Pishock, who's been with the fire department for a little while, has been working during his day shift and his on-shift times, working with a software called CrewSense. He chose to take this on, working with this for the benefit of the department with the full support of the command staff. And from my understanding, he's done a wonderful job, and when one of the chiefs speaks, they can speak directly to what CrewSource is. But it's just another compliment to members of our city staff that are stepping up and doing things that are typically outside the bounds of what they would normally do. The next thing is back in February, we applied for an EPA recycle grant, we put in for a new F-450 truck, a box for that truck, and a chipper. And we were advised last week that we are awarded that grant. So we're going to get basically $115,000 worth of that equipment for $30,000 out of the sanitation fund. Some of that had already been appropriated, and I know an appropriation will be coming at the next finance meeting. But our grants writers worked with Mr. I, and we were able to procure that vehicle and that chipper. And the last thing that I have tonight is and it was announced with our department heads, but this evening I'd like to congratulate, and I'm honored to announce to City Council that Mr. Assistant Chief Joe Pernesti, effective yesterday, has been, I've placed him as the interim fire chief until 12/31 of this year. And some people have asked why 12/31, because that was an agreement we came upon, and the test for fire chief likely will not be giving until late September, early October. And if Mr. Pernesti is the person that gets that position, then we'll deal with that. But if he is not, that'll give us the opportunity to transition between then and the end of the year. So congratulations to Assistant Chief Pernesti, which will now be Interim Chief Pernesti, and also thanking Assistant Chief Gall, who has been working with Chief Pernesti over the last number of weeks, running the fire department as our acting chief. And I appreciate his leadership and the things that have been accomplished over the last number of weeks while he's been in charge. So the torch has been passed as of yesterday. So again, congratulations to Interim Chief Pernesti. And that's all I have unless there's any questions for me.
Any questions for Mr. Brubaker? We're good. Chief Pernesti, congratulations on your appointment. I look forward to working with you. Assistant Chief, thank you for your service over and through, and your continued service as we move forward through over and through. Both of you appreciate it. Finance Director Plesky.
No report at this time, Mr. President.
Law Director Deary.
Good evening, Mr. President. I would ask that council would consider adjourning into executive session to discuss the matter of pending litigation. Attorney Brian Balzer is here to update council regarding some matters of that nature.
Okay, very good, thank you. Any questions for Law Director Deary? Elyria Police Department, Captain Hammonds. Elyria Fire Department, Chief Pernesti, or Assistant Chief Gall, if you want to.
Nothing else to say. Nick's done a wonderful job. Honestly, I think.
Yeah. Thank you, Chief Pernesti. All right, Mr. Oswald.
Through you, Mr. President, I guess back to the police or maybe Mr. Brubaker, they did a real good job getting your parking lot all taken care of. I have not drove back in there, but it seems like it's at a standstill. I still don't see no new fences, no new gates. When is that project going to be finished, or is it not? Thank you.
Through you, Mr. President, Mr. Oswald, it is stalled because, like a lot of products, the fencing and the gates to finish that product off have been delayed due to manufacturing. We're hopeful by the middle of this month to have that project completed, striped, and done, but we're waiting on the fencing and the decorative fencing.
Any other questions? Very good. Assistant Safety Service Director Calvert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to remind the community as well as council, when you're out there, out in your wards, working with your businesses, that the state of Ohio generously funded some COVID resources for small businesses, and they still have funding available. So they funded up to $30,000 for food and beverage establishments, entertainment venues, as well as lodging. And then what is critically helpful to a lot of small businesses is up to $10,000 if your business was started January 1st, 2020 through December 31st of 2020. So there are grants available to help offset decreased revenues as a result of COVID-19. So just a reminder that if anybody wants additional information, they're welcome to contact my office, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Ms. Calvert? Okay. Very good. Engineer Schneider.
Thank you, Mr. President. On Friday, Governor DeWine's office announced that they were moving forward with a water and wastewater infrastructure grant. I've sent on to the council clerk's office a copy of a referral that I asked that you consider to move forward and place on a committee so that we can move forward. It's our understanding that this grant money is more of a first come, first served basis. So it's geared toward water and wastewater. So with that, I'd also just inform council that the street resurfacing, we are a little behind on getting that started. Phase one for the contractor, it has been bid out and the contract awarded. It's just, unfortunately, the weather has pushed them back in other communities, which is causing our schedule to be delayed. So the contractor is anticipating starting later on this month with the street resurfacing, and we still have phase two to bid out, as well as Ohio Public Works projects that are out for bid right now as well. So we look forward to moving forward with those as fast as possible, but hopefully the weather will hold off a little better and be able to get some more work done. But with that.
Any questions for Mr. Schneider, Mr. Oswald?
Through you, Mr. President. We were getting new pavement on Burns Road and Gulf Road, but that was coming from a different funding, not from the city. Will that be in a different time frame on when that is started as compared to when our issue 6 Bunny Streets is, can you give us a timeline on that?
Sure.
Thank you.
We did not receive funding until July of this year, so we are currently in the process of bidding those projects out. So, but both of them have been received grant money, and we are moving forward with them.
Questions for Mr. Schneider? All right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Schneider.
Thank you.
Human Resources, Gene Yusefi.
Thank you. We're in Human Resources Department, we're designing a new leadership training program for 43 of our directors, managers, and supervisors. We're going to be moving forward with 7 to 10 sessions of programming, including professional trainers such as Melvin Smith, who's a Case Western Reserve University professor and author. Some of the topics are going to include emotional intelligence, leadership and management assessments, effective practices for high-performance teams, strategic leadership, legal compliance, and we hope to begin this in October. Just wanted to make sure you knew about it.
Very good. Any questions for Ms. Yousefi? All right, very good. Thank you very much. I think I've got everybody. Okay, very good. Moving along, President's referrals and remonstrances. Item number 1, planning is community development. Item number 2, community development. Item number 3, finance. Item number 4, finance. Item number 5, finance. Item number 6, finance. Item number 7, finance. Item number 8, finance. Item number 9, finance. Item number 10, finance. Item number 11, utility safety and environment. Item number 12, utility safety and environment. Item number 13, utility safety and environment and finance. Item number 14, utility safety and environment and finance. Item number 15, utility safety and environment and finance. Item number 16, utility safety and environment and finance. Item 17 through 19, receipt and place on file in the clerk's office. Petitions and remonstrances from council members?
There are none.
Petitions and remonstrances from the lobby?
We have a couple. Marty Martinez, 358 BB Avenue, Economic Development in Elyria.
Marty Martinez, I live at 358 BB Avenue. I used to be involved in a lot of communities. I'll start all over again. My name's Marty Martinez at 358 BB Avenue. I live in Elyria. I used to be involved in many committee meetings in Elyria, including the economic development, one of the committees. And since I'm minored in economics, when I was working, I used to study economy all the time for Ohio, Lorain County, and especially Elyria. And I quit studying in 2019 because I got a lot of things to do as a retired person. But and the only committee I'm on right now is I'm on the health department for bicycle riding. And I want to say thank you, too, because I went for a bicycle ride this morning. When I went around the square, there's signs out there to remind people about asbestos and to stay 3 feet away, because I've been in a lot of dangerous situations. I have been hit on my bike, so I just do the bike route anymore. It's just not worth the risk for me because of my age, but that's not why I'm here. When I look at Elyria and I hear what's going on, and again, I've studied Elyria a lot, you know, and we used to look at the question, what can we do for Elyria? And I keep on asking myself over and over, is why isn't it happening in Elyria? When you look at Cleveland, I worked in Cleveland for many, many years. I kind of understand what happened there, how they're on the growth, because I could see it happening a long time ago. Avon's on the growth, which is, of course, all that farming land is bound to be, and it's by I-90. And look at Westlake. It has a city within a city, Crocker Park. Why did that happen? And these are questions that need to be looked at. Why? I think. And I just went to Mommy's City, Ohio a few times, and I was surprised. I got off the turnpike. I usually go south there, but I went north for a change, and there's an Amazon distribution center. And so I asked my question, how did they get one? Why did they get one when all they have is a Route 75 and turnpike, and they put it right in their mall area? When you look at Elyria, we have I-90, I-480, Route 20. We're not far from the, and the turnpike. We're not far from the airport. We're not far from 75 and Route 71. And I used to travel all these because of working and when I was a contractor. It's not a big deal in driving. But again, I'm asking the question, why is this happening instead of looking at the what's? For some reason, all the studies I've done, there's a lot of things I can't comprehend, and that's one reason I quit doing all these studies.
are just not seeing things right, but I'm interested in hearing what other people have to say, because I just don't know what I'm missing. But again, I just hope we look at the whys besides the what with these consultant people, and I just want to thank you very much, and I hope you kind of heard what I had to say and understood what I had to say. Thanks again, and go Elyria.
Thank you, Mr. Martinez. Appreciate your comments, as always. Lynn Collins, 138 Berkeley Road, stormwater.
Good evening, all. I've been at 138 Berkeley since 1954. Born in Elyria, lived in the 200 block of 8th Street, moved to where I'm at now, off to college, military, back there with my folks, old widow mother and whatnot. I'm still looking to get our drainage problems fixed. I started talking to people about that way back in the mid-'70s. A couple of people have looked at me like they don't exist and it's never come up. I have a voluminous pile of correspondence where I have talked to like Mayor Keyes and Lon Shippey and other people about it. We get nothing done. I like to see something done out there. I get the feeling that we've taken these places in. When we moved there in '54, the city limits sign was on the south side of Berkeley at the corner. And as all that got brought into the city has gotten the tax money and it really hasn't gotten the services. The old joke with public servants that are in office is, you know, we get something done and somebody else will have to take care of it later. The later's almost come and gone on a lot of these things. I've got some things I threw together quickly tonight, and I'll leave with Mr. Lotko there. I haven't bothered to talk to our present mayor, but certainly I talked to Mike Keyes, and after a little bit, when I left his office, I put together some things, came up with the sanitary lateral program for us. I've got letters to him I made copies of. Before COVID hit, I made a bunch of pictures and whatnot, brought them up here for the clerk of the council to distribute to people to see what things are like. This is a problem that grew as things changed on Overbrook and around. It won't go away. You know, a couple people have looked at me like I'm a burr under the horse's blanket, you know, where the saddle goes. And it won't go away with me. It's a matter of the property, the street, and the north end of town. I've talked to Mr. Oswald a couple times. He's probably looked at me like I'm, and you know, there's nothing I can do except take care of myself, throw people out that don't have a legal right there, and press on. And that's what I've done. And certainly when I have to leave there and turn the place over to somebody else, whoever that may be, they will have pictures and a good record of the things that I have done and the circumstances, and nobody will just start from square one. You know, we built the place. My parents were in business. We just purchased property down at 303 Cleveland Street, where the Enterprise Place is at. I've talked to Jack about that, Mr. Sarah. And we laugh at the changes that have taken place. But, you know, having been around here for ages, last time I knocked elbows with Mr. Baird, it was at the cardiologist's office. What can I say? You know, oh, Jack, you're here too? I'm with you now. So there we go, guys. It's not a good thing. Kenny knows that I try to be a gentleman. I think the engineer's office knows that. So be it. And Mary Serwicka, someday I want to catch her in a public meeting so I can ask her publicly if, when the city had the first Bring Your Kid to Work Day, you know, when she met the fire horses at her dad's elbow, did they prefer apples or carrots? I've been thinking about that forever. So, Joe, you ask her that. You can even attribute it to me.
Mr. Collins, thank you for coming up. We appreciate your conversation in regard to the sewer. No, that's okay. I know that that's an issue that's been there for a long time. We're hoping maybe with this new infrastructure bill is an opportunity, you know, for us to, you know, fix these problems over in that area, but the rest of this community as well. So we'll take a glance at your information that you brought at us over here through yours tonight, and someone will get back with you just to kind of let you know what hopefully our plan is going to be in implementing that. That's all remonstrances from the lobby. All right, reports of standing and special committees. We have one. We have considered the matter of a liquor license transfer request as submitted by Elyria Sunco Gas LLC to be transferred to Harlem Food Mart and Vape LLC located at 404 East Ave, Elyria, and the City of Elyria does not request a hearing. Mr. Callahan.
Mr. President, I move that this committee report be passed on its first reading.
Second.
Second by Ms. Mitchell. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried. That's all public hearings. Resolutions, first reading. I'm sorry, that was Committee Report 2021-9. Sponsored by Finance, a resolution approving a list submitted by the Safety Service Director for the collection of delinquent inactive utility accounts and directing the Clerk of Council to certify and set accounts to the Lorraine County Auditor. Ms. Davis?
Mr. President, I ask that this resolution be passed on its first reading and on the suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Mr. Baird. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. On the suspension. Point of order. On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried. Resolution 2021-17. Yeah. That's it for resolutions first reading. Resolutions second reading. There are none. Resolutions third reading. There are none. Ordinances first reading. Sponsored by Community Development, an ordinance amending Section 1131.02 codified ordinances of the City of Elyria, Ohio, known as the zoning ordinance, to rezone real property located on Longfellow Street, Elyria, Ohio, from R-TH Residential 2 Household District to a B-G Business General District. I declare that this ordinance has first reading. Okay. Sponsored by Community Development and Finance, an ordinance granting exception to the City of Elyria's subordination policy for a community development rehabilitation loan as requested by Lizzie M. Taylor.
Mr. President, I move that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-117. Sponsored by Community Development and Finance. An ordinance amending the Community Development Block Grant, CDBG Program Plan Year 2021 Annual Action Plan and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Callahan.
Mr. President, I move that this ordinance be passed under suspension of rules and declare an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
Question's been called. On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-118. Sponsored by Community Development and Finance. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an amendment number 1 to the professional services agreement with Joel Ratner, Community Partnership LLC.
Can I get a motion to get it on the floor? Moved by Ms. Mitchell.
Second.
Second by Mr. Baird. Assistant Safety Service Director Calvert.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thought it might be helpful to take a step back and remember how we got to the point where we are today. So just as a reminder, CDCs are nonprofits. They're community-based organizations that are focused on revitalizing the areas in which they're located. They operate in areas that have experienced a long-term disinvestment that results in poverty, loss of jobs, a decaying physical environment, and inadequate housing stock. Typically, their focus areas are in the spaces of housing, community health, planning, small business support, and real estate development. So they can vary outside of that, but that's typically the core of the type of work that they do. What makes them unique is that they're independent nonprofit organizations. They're community-driven, which means their mission, their organizational structure, their programming is all determined by local stakeholders. They also capture funding from public and private organizations that otherwise would not be available to the community. And they help focus that public and private investment into specific areas for maximum impact. So when we take a look at what that looks like and what that means, we realize that we have a gap in an organization that can deliver on that type of service for Elyria residents, businesses, and stakeholders. So last year, as a reminder, we did receive a Nord Family Foundation grant in the amount of $65,000 to help with the development of a community development corporation. Per the terms of that grant, the city was expected to invest $30,000 itself to support this development phase of the Community Development Corporation. So since early this year, we have been working diligently on that with the assistance of Mr. Joel Ratner. And over the last 6 months, we've established a steering committee, which has met at least 5 times. The organization has come up with a name, a mission, and a vision. And there are several working committees that have been formed. So with this community participation, with these stakeholders who've come to the table to volunteer for this effort, they have focused on the areas of governance, events, downtown development, and housing. And one of those great examples that we have is Third Thursday. So we've seen hundreds of people, if not, thousands or 1,000 come to downtown Elyria to celebrate, to really participate, and it's activated the core of the community. So that's just one example of a success that can be had through this type of organization. So that being said, we still have some work that needs to be done. We need to file the 501c3 papers. That is in progress, so that is underway. We are working with an attorney to get those filed, so that's a work in progress. We need to select and create a board of directors with an initial meeting to be convened this fall. I'm very excited and pleased to share that a member or members of City Council will be asked to participate in that as well. So to be a chance to be on the governance side of things, helping move this organization along going forward. And there would be the continuation of events. There's multiple events planned in conjunction with the CDC. Beautification and real estate development projects, housing and initiatives, and staffing. So that is in the core body of work that needs to be done moving forward. So given where we're at, there's been a tremendous amount of work. There's a lot of momentum building. There's a lot of very enthusiastic community stakeholders that want to be a part of this effort and want to see Elyria revitalized. We are requesting that Mr. Ratner's contract be continued moving forward for an additional 6 months at a rate not to exceed $36,000. So that is the request. I am happy to answer any questions you might have. Mr. Ratner is here as well to answer any questions and be able to address any of your comments.
Well, I think the reason why we wanted to, obviously, this is coming for our committee and everything, and there was some discussion at the last meeting in regard to the status of where things were at, and then, you know, establishing the 501c3 and why that wasn't really established first before doing all this. I know there's legwork involved in everything, I understand that, but, you know, maybe having this in place, and I think those are some of the questions that kind of came up in regard to where we're back then when it was initially set up and to where we're at now. It seems like maybe there's progress made, but not to where maybe we thought it should be. So I think there was concern about that. And then Mr. Ratner, if you want to kind of weigh in with the council here just on what you've done to date, other than what Dawn has said.
Thank you very much, Council President. I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to work in Elyria. It's a wonderful place in a community with really outstanding assets that I think can be leveraged and built on. We made a tactical decision to address the question. Frankly, we could have started by incorporating in the state of Ohio and getting a 501c3. We made a tactical decision not to do that for two reasons. One, we wanted to engage the community because there are decisions that go into you actually file bylaws when you apply for your 501c3. So we wanted that to come from a community process. So as Director Calvert alluded to, we've had multiple meetings of multiple committees. So the governance committee, separate from the full steering committee, has really met to develop this vision for what the CDC will do. And in doing that has really had a chance to engage people. And to me, that engagement process is the key to effective community development. Frankly, it's very easy to just set up a corporation, but if people have not been involved in that, it's not likely to go very far. So we really made a decision both to engage people around what the CDC could do and what it would look like, and also to do some programming to demonstrate what a CDC would do for the community. So those were two tactical decisions. Again, Director Calvert referred to the third Thursdays, which we're very thrilled. We have several more events that we're hoping to do in the fall and even through the winter to have a winter festival. And it's really about activating the square in an attempt ultimately to bring investment back to downtown Elyria. Again, it's a gem. And really the idea is to reverse the flow of disinvestment that you've experienced, over the last 20, 30, 40 years. And also really to help people to think of Elyria in a new way with a really bright future. And we know that there is huge potential and that the historic nature really sets us up for a bright future. So Dawn referred to, again, we've set up a lot of infrastructure. We've planned the events. In addition to events, there is a public art project that we're hoping to implement in the fall. It's called Historic Looking Glasses, so there would be 5 public art installations which would essentially be glass and metal structures that would show a historic structure that no longer exists, and these would be around downtown. So these are some of the tools that a community development corporation uses typically: events, public art, we call it creative placemaking, in addition to real estate development. So we actually are pretty far along on some of those. And so we've not just focused on setting up the CDC, but engaging people and beginning the programming. And actually, I think that bodes well for as Dawn referred to, the significant momentum we have and the energy around this organization.
How long do you foresee that to establish the 501c3? I mean, are you that close to, as far as, are you a month away or 2 months away, or?
So there's technically two steps. So first, you need to incorporate in the state of Ohio, just to become a legal entity, and that takes 2 hours, frankly. I mean, that's a very quick process. That can be done in a day. You go to the Secretary of State's website and file, and again, we've got a lawyer doing that. The longer process, and again, frankly, I've done this many times with a number of organizations, is actually filing with the IRS and being accepted so that we can accept money from philanthropy, which ultimately is part of the goal, to bring in new money to the redevelopment of the city. The IRS has, sometimes they're a little faster, sometimes they're a little slower. Right now, I think it's running 3 to 4 months. Again, we've engaged a lawyer who has a relationship with the city, is my understanding, and he has deep experience in community development. And one thing he said when we gave him all the paperwork is, "Oh, you're very well set up." We basically had drafted the bylaws, so we're very far along, so he'll be able to submit it. I would expect sometime in August to the IRS, and I'm hopeful that by the end of the year, obviously we don't control them, but by the end of the year we will have that organization. In the meantime, though, the initial board will be convened. We're hopeful that it will begin in September. I'm happy to say that Christy Sink, who is the head of your largest employer, has agreed to be a board member, as well as Dave Jazuski, who is the head of the credit union, as I'm sure you guys know. But having the credit union is involved is particularly important. They are in the process of becoming a community development financed institution, and that is a really great thing for Elyria. It's a U.S. Treasury Department designation, which makes them eligible for federal money. Every year, the Treasury Department gives out money to CDFIs, to these organizations that do community-based lending. So ComStar will potentially be a very important partner for the CDC in bringing in, again, new pots of money that the city's not been able to access around things like home ownership, potentially small business support. Sorry, my wife tells me I talk too much.
No. And well, with you saying that, that's kind of generally what we do when we go into a committee, a joint committee. We kind of expound what you're just telling us now. And generally, that's how that works. We would go into a joint community development finance prior to all that. We would find out about the CDC and the CIC and how they both work together. Can they work together? How are they different? And what benefits they can feed off of each other? And here we are doing it at a full council meeting, just because we're asked to move forward with moving forward with your contract, and that was kind of the concern that we had over and through. And I know the mayor was going to relay a presentation as well, or his comments in regards to the reason why you both collaborated together to kind of maybe take that path moving forward to where we're at now. And does anybody have any questions in regards to the committee? Mr. Oswald.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to see the CDC. The thing that bothers me is I feel like we don't see the accountability of what is going on right here. We're paying for something. We don't know what we're getting. Why are you coming right now and telling us what we should have been told a while back? I don't appreciate that. I'm sure everybody else, your board of directors, I would have thought would probably be one of your first things you try to get together, but I don't know this because I'm just a carpenter. The other thing, you talked about a tactical decision, which I know that's what the mayor says. I don't agree with that, but then, of course, what do I know? I thought you set up being in business, and then you go out to do business. Well, it's backwards to me. In that point, I don't understand. I thought that we were going to set up the CDC and then get it running. And we're having it running. And yes, we have, the parties in the park and third Thursdays and all this, and you've accomplished this, but we're doing it under different entities. I don't feel that that's correct. And like I said, so now you're coming in and you're telling us all this stuff. What's going to go on in the next 6 months? Are we going to have updates? Do we know? Aren't we supposed to get updates and knowledge on what's going on? So that's where I'm hesitant, and that's what's bothering right now. And I probably made a bad comment last time about, you stringing us along. And it wasn't that way. It's just, I don't want to keep going. We're in so far right now. Yeah, to throw that money away and not finish on something that we started, I don't want to do that. But I don't want to keep going then another 6 months, and then another 6 months. So that's where I find hesitant. So thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr.
May I respond briefly?
Yes.
So first of all, I apologize. I'll take responsibility. We should have done a better job of briefing council from the beginning, and that was a mistake. So I acknowledge that and apologize. I'm certainly happy, frankly, to provide monthly reports and/or written reports and/or attend community development meetings on a monthly basis and provide a monthly oral report. Frankly, again, I'll talk as much as you want, and I'll do a PowerPoint presentation on a monthly meeting if you would like to do that. So I'm happy to try to remedy that going forward.
Mr. President, can I just say one last? And you're right. But why are you telling, this is, I thought, what the job should have been all along. You do this all the time, updates, and we weren't getting updates. But now, because we've talked about it, now, okay, I'll give you updates, I'll go to the meetings. So you get where I'm coming from, kind of?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. Ms. Mitchell, and then Mr. Baird.
Thank you, Mr. President. Through you to Mr. Raffner. I agree with Mr. Oswald. This is something that should have been brought before council. This is committee meeting work, and we don't normally do committee work on the council floor. One thing I said at the last meeting was, I'd like updates. I'd like to know what you all are doing going forward. So if we could do that, come to community development finance meetings once a month, give us an update, that'd be great. But, Mr. President, if I may, one thing you said that has me a little concerned with the art project you guys, are you working in conjunction with the Elyria Arts Council, or is this separate and apart from?
No, we've reached out to them, and we've also reached out to the Lorraine Historic Society, who has agreed, who is a partner because it's about researching historic buildings. So frankly, community development can only succeed in deep partnership with existing nonprofits as well as with the city, because frankly, there are not enough resources. So we all got to row together, and admittedly, we didn't get it all right from the start. But it's still early. It's not too late. So yes, we've reached out to them, and yes, we need to work all together because this is it's a tall mountain to climb, right? To return investment to the city, because it naturally flows to Crocker Park, frankly.
Right.
Thank you,
Mr. Baird.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. President. I've done a little research on Mr. Ratner's history and his successes, and they've been very, very unbelievable, quite honestly. He is more than qualified, and we're lucky to have him, my opinion. I think, where we got, and I don't want, you took credit for not doing this. I don't think it's your fault, but I won't, somebody was in charge of this and didn't give us the information appropriate time. We're past that. No use throwing snowballs now. I think we should move ahead and do this. I think we're on the right track from what you've said and what Dawn has said and what the mayor said in the past. We're on the right direction, and we're into it. We got a major grant on it from the Nord Family Foundation. Our part of this is very small, totally at that point, other than the staff time for Ms. Calvert and the mayor and so on. But I think we should move forward. We're into it, and to hesitate now would be a mistake, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baird. Anybody else have any comments in regards to it? I kind of feel both ways with what Mr. Oswald and Mr. Baird and Ms. Mitchell. They're all kind of bring valid points to where we're at here today. And I made those comments back to where the accountability had to be at the last joint committee meeting where we were moving forward with this. And, you know, I guess my thing would be is, even though we do this in committee report and we're having these discussions, I guess the biggest concern that I have is the funding mechanism down the line when this is all incorporated and ready to go. What are we anticipating for us, our contribution to be at to sustain the CDC and in the private sector, public, that we can kind of make sure that this kind of goes around. And I know that that's information that, you know, I would like to have as well, to see what the plan is in moving forward with that. So,
if I could, through the president.
Should I address that briefly?
You can address it briefly. I mean, I guess at my point, we're at, you know, deciding what we want to do here. I mean,
to me, the best example of a CDC that has done really dynamic work in a city that has some similarities with Elyria is Lakewood Alive. Lakewood Alive is a 17-year-old community development corporation that's done really remarkable work, both in housing and in commercial development in the city of Lakewood. They've played a wonderful role. I'm hoping that we can have the new board have a presentation from them, maybe go see some of their work. They have, I believe, 7 employees, give or take, and about 30% of their budget is from different parts of the city. So some of that includes CDBG money, for example, that's distributed in other programming that they're in effect running for the city. And doing on the city's behalf. They have money from foundations and philanthropy, and you actually have a pretty good philanthropic community here in Lorraine, and events and sponsorships bring in money. So that's just an example of another place. I can't tell you today what it will look like in Elyria, but that's an example that I think is relevant and useful, and I'll even say inspirational.
Yeah. Well, Director Deere, did you want to comment?
For the record, through you, Mr. President, it is my understanding, and Mr. Pileski, I'm sure can verify this. My understanding is that the initial grant monies from NORD have been exhausted, and that going forward, this money would be coming out of the general fund. Is that accurate?
Through you, yes, that is correct. There is currently a proposal pending with Nord Family, and we're in discussions also with the Nordson and the community foundations and other potential philanthropic sources. So frankly, this money will be deeply leveraged, but timing is really tricky with foundations, is what I'll say. So it's kind of keeping it moving until that next piece comes in.
Very good. Anybody else have any comments or discussion?
Through the president, if I could.
Mr. Williams?
Yes, yes, thank you, Director Deary. The initial leverage was a certain amount of money from Nord Family Foundation with the expectation with us making a certain contribution. And so we spent their money first. So this isn't money that we weren't expecting to contribute to this investment. And so I just want to make sure that was clear. It was just a question of which monies were spent first, but all these monies were designated towards this. Thank you, sir.
And thank you, Mr. Williams. Is there any further discussion? If not, I'll call for the question. Question has been called. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carried. So, Mr. Ratner, in saying all that, if you could, once the contract is, you know, put in place, and you got, we'd like to have another report, and then the status of how this is going to be moving forward.
I'm happy to do so, and look forward to further conversations with you and all of council, and available whenever you'd like me to be.
Thank you.
Point of order, I'm sorry, through you, Mr. President, did you suspend the rules on this matter? Take a vote?
Oh, point of order. I think we got caught up in the conversations of the, so point of order.
I never made a motion to pass it.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Thank you.
Ordinance 2021-119. Sponsored by Utility Safety and Environment. An ordinance to perform a minor rehabilitation project on State Route 10 from US 20 to State Route 480 and on US Route 20 from State Route 10 to Chestnut Ridge Road in Lorain County. This project limits are within the city of Elyria and US Route 20 and within the city of North Ridgeville on State Route 10. The work includes concrete and asphalt concrete repairs, resurfacing, the roadway full within paving, all the interchange ramps, bridge maintenance work, and pavement markings.
Ms. Mitchell.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
All those in favor of the suspension signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-120. Sponsored by Utility Safety and Environment. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to apply to the state of Ohio for Round 36 grant and/or loan administered by the Ohio Public Works Commission for repair, reconstruction, and resurfacing of certain roads in the city of Elyria, and authorizing the acceptance of said grant and/or loan if offered, and to provide local funds as needed to complete said projects and declare an emergency.
Ms. Mitchell.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-121. Sponsored by Utility Safety and Environment. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for the 2021 crack sealing project and declare an emergency.
Ms. Mitchell.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
Questions on the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-122. Sponsored by Finance. An ordinance authorizing the submission through the Law Director's Office of applications to the Office of Attorney General, State of Ohio, and to accept if offered the 2020-2021 Victims of Crime Act, VOCA grant, and the 2021 to 2022 State Victims Assistance Act, SVAA grant for the Victims Assistance Program, and declare an emergency.
Ms. Davis.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading on a suspension of rule and declare an emergency.
Second.
Second by Mr. Bear. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-123. Sponsored by Finance. An ordinance amending ordinance number 2021-50, known as the 2021 Permanent Appropriations Ordinance, to change funds in various accounts.
Ms. Davis.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading on the suspension of rules.
Second.
Second by Mr. Baer. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-124. Sponsored by Utility, Safety, and Environment. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for the East Park Pavilion install and concrete work project and declare an emergency.
Ms. Mitchell.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-125. Sponsored by Utility, Safety, and Environment and Finance. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for the Fuller Road pedestrian bridge project and declare an emergency.
Ms. Mitchell.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
On the suspension, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-126. Sponsored by Utility, Safety, and Environment and Finance. An ordinance authorizing the mayor to enter into an agreement to purchase 10 eVols XL solar-powered radar speed signs and posts and declare an emergency.
Ms. Mitchell.
Mr. President, I ask that this ordinance be passed on its first reading under suspension of rules and declared an emergency.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Is there any further discussion?
Question.
Question called on its suspension. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the emergency, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. On the passage, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carried.
Ordinance 2021-127. That's all ordinances first reading.
Ordinance is second reading.
There are none.
Ordinance is third reading.
There are none.
Committee calls.
Community Development requests the presence of the Law Director, Safety Service Director, Building Inspector, and Engineer on Monday, 8:30, council chambers, beginning at 6 p.m. Joint CD Finance requests the Mayor, Law Director, Finance Director, Safety Service Director, and Engineer on Monday, 8:30, beginning at 6 p.m. All items referred. Finance requests the presence of the Mayor, Law Director, Finance Director, Safety Service Director, and Engineer on Monday, 8:30, immediately following the joint. All items referred. Utility, Safety, Environment requests the Law Director, Safety Service Director, and Engineer on Wednesday, 8/18 at 6 p.m. All items referred. And Strategic Planning requests the Mayor, Safety Service Director, Auditor, and Solicitor on Tuesday, 9/7, immediately following council. All items referred.
Very good. Miscellaneous unfinished business? Anybody? Very good.
Through you, Mr. President, it is my understanding in speaking with Attorney Balser that there may be action following executive session tonight.
Okay. All right, with that being said, can I get a motion to go into executive
Move it.
session for pending litigation and possible recommendations?
Second.
Second by
Me.
I move.
moved by Mr. Baird, second by Ms. Mitchell.
Roll call vote.
Roll call vote.
Mr. Callahan.
Aye.
Mr. Sierra.
Aye.
Mr. Oswald.
Aye.
Mr. Baird.
Aye.
Mrs. Mitchell.
Aye.
Mr. Tolet. Mrs. Simmons.
Aye.
Mrs. Davis.
Aye.
Mrs. Keys.
Aye.
Mr. Jesse.
Aye.
Mr. Stewart.
Aye.
10 ayes.
Thank you. At this time, I'd ask the general public to please step out. We have to go into executive session.
Two questions. Why wasn't that read as suspension? I think that's what they were expecting.